Imagine for a moment that the salt air filling your lungs isn't just a breeze from the Atlantic, but a breath from a century long gone. If you stood right here on this limestone soil in the year 1885, would you recognize the rhythm of the tide? Or would the silence of a world before the gasoline engine overwhelm you? We are standing at a moment of transformation, a city caught between a quiet Spanish past and an incoming Gilded Age. Welcome to Street, Augustine, Florida, in the spring of 1885. Through AI reconstruction built from Sanborn maps, stereoscopic photographs from the Florida Photographic Collection, and diaries of winter residents, we have rebuilt a city that was, at this exact moment, the most talked about destination in America. The Street, Augustine of 1885, is a city of layers. Narrow, tabby-walled lanes are hemmed in by the massive grey bulk of the Castillo de San Marcos to the north and the shifting marshes to the south. To your east lies the Matanzas River, a lagoon separated from the Atlantic by the low scrub of Anastasia Island. The city's spine is George Street, a corridor so narrow that two carriages can barely pass, yet it is the main artery of the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the contiguous United States. We are witnessing the final days of the old street, Augustine. Henry Flagler has just arrived, construction is beginning, and the quiet, worn charm of a Spanish outpost is about to meet the money and ambition of the Gilded Age. Our journey begins at the northern edge of the city, standing before the city gates. Look up at these two pillars of coquina stone, weathered and pitted by decades of humid air. Built in 1808, these gates are not just a monument. They were designed as a working defensive entry point. The smell here is damp earth, horse manure, and faint orange blossoms from groves just beyond the city limits. To your left and right, the remnants of the Cubo Line, an earthen wall originally reinforced with palmetto logs, still stretched toward the river and the marsh. You hear the clack of a mule-drawn streetcar approaching, its iron wheels on uneven tracks. The men passing through wear wide-brimmed felt hats and linen coats, faces tanned by a Florida sun that northern visitors find both unfamiliar and unforgiving. These gates were constructed in 1808 during the final rebuild of the Cubo Line, the defensive earthwork that closed off the northern edge of the city. The original wooden gate on this site dated to the early 18th century, built after the English raid of 1702 devastated the town. By 1885, the military purpose of the gates has been largely forgotten. They are more landmark than barrier. Near the base of the western pillar, a group of Seminole Indians who have traveled from the south to trade deerskins and beaded craftwork. Time equals 400 milliseconds / greater than weight in the shade. In a few decades, these gates will be a backdrop for tourists in horseless carriages, their defensive history mostly unknown to the people walking past. Walking south from the gates, we enter the shaded corridor of George Street. The houses are built right up to the edge of the unpaved road, their second-story wooden balconies overhanging our heads. The sun filters through in sharp, dusty shafts, catching the texture of the tabby walls, a local building material of crushed oyster shells, lime, and sand. You hear muffled voices speaking Menorcan-inflected Spanish behind heavy cedar shutters. The air is cooler here, trapped by the thick masonry and the narrowness of the lane. Time equals 800 milliseconds / greater than. A black cat darts across the sandy path and disappears through a gate into a courtyard where a fig tree throws deep shade. This street reflects the St. Augustine plan, laid out under the Spanish laws of the Indies. Homes oriented inward around private courtyards, not outward toward the street. Many of these structures date to the Second Spanish period and survived the fires and sieges that leveled the wooden outskirts of town. On your right, a shopkeeper is hanging a sign for curiosities, alligator teeth, seashells, orange wood canes, aimed at the growing trickle of wealthy northern visitors. This intimate Mediterranean scale defines the city in 1885, but much of it is considered dilapidated by newcomers eager for progress. In the years ahead, many of these original tabby homes will be torn down or heavily altered to fit a Victorian-era romanticized idea of what Spanish architecture should look like. We emerge from George Street, into the bright, open space of the Plaza de la Constitución. This rectangular common has been the center of public life since the city's founding in 1565. The ground is packed sand and patches of Bermuda grass. In the center stands the white obelisk of the Constitution Monument, erected in 1813 to honor the Spanish Constitution. To the east, the public market, an open-air pavilion with brick pillars, is busy with activity. You smell fresh-caught mullet and red snapper from ice-packed crates, strong coffee, and tobacco. A Spanish guitar drifts from a nearby tavern, mixing with the sound of official announcements near the government house. The Plaza has been the stage for every political shift this city has ever seen. Spanish, British, Spanish again, American, Confederate, and American once more. In 1885, it is the social crossroads where local Menorcan fishermen share space with New York bankers. On the benches under the live oaks, elderly men play dominoes in the afternoon heat. Beneath this sand lie the foundations of earlier wooden cathedrals and government buildings, decades of rebuilding after fires and raids. The market will remain a landmark, but the surrounding skyline is about to change dramatically. Within 3 years, the towers of the Ponce de Leon Hotel will rise nearby, reshaping what this city looks and feels like. On the north side of the plaza, the Cathedral of St. Augustine stands in quiet, solid form. In 1885, its exterior is much as it was when completed in 1797. Thick coquina walls, a modest facade, and notably, no bell tower yet. The bell tower is actually under construction at this very moment, being funded in part by Henry Flagler, and will be completed by 1887. Step inside and the temperature drops. The thick coquina walls hold the night's coolness, and the air carries beeswax candles and old wood. The interior is plain, lit by high windows and votive candles. A woman in a dark lace mantilla kneels on the dirt floor, praying for a sun at sea. This church is the spiritual center of the community and home to the oldest Catholic parish in the United States. The current structure was completed in 1797, replacing earlier churches destroyed in raids and fires going back to the city's founding. The church keeps records of every birth, marriage, and death, documenting a community that has always been more diverse than outsiders expect. On April 12, 1887, less than 2 years from now, a fire will gut the interior of this building. The coquina walls will survive, but everything inside will be lost. The congregation will launch a national fundraising appeal, hire architect James Renwick Jr., and rebuild, adding the bell tower we can already see taking shape, along with a new transept, giving the cathedral the look it carries today. A few blocks west of the plaza, we reach the most dramatic site in the city, not a building, but a construction site. Here, at the edge of the old town, Henry Flagler is building his first Florida hotel, the Ponce de Leon. The ground is mud, timber scaffolding, and the constant noise of construction. Hundreds of laborers, many of them African-American workers and European immigrants, work under a blistering sun. The approach is unconventional. Workers are pouring liquid concrete mixed with crushed coquina shell into wooden molds, building up the walls in lifts. The site smells of wet cement and sawdust. Flagler, a co-founder of Standard Oil, began clearing and filling this site in the summer of 1885. It was previously a salt marsh and orange grove, and broke ground on the foundation in late November of that year. The hotel is being designed by the New York firm of Carrere and Hastings, their first major commission, in a Spanish Renaissance revival style. Construction is supervised by contractors James Maguire and Joseph MacDonald. The building will be the first large, multi-story structure in the United States, built entirely of poured concrete. Electricity, designed and installed by Thomas Edison, a personal friend of Flagler, will power the hotel's lighting, making it one of the first buildings in the country designed with electric light from the ground up. In December 1885, Flagler also purchased a stake in a short-line railroad to connect St. Augustine to Jacksonville, understanding that a hotel of this scale needs reliable transportation to fill its rooms. The Ponce de Leon will open on January 10, 1888, and within a season, Street Augustine will be famous across the country. Leaving the noise of construction, we walk east toward the cooling air of the bayfront. Along the Seawall, a coquina and granite barrier built by the US Army in the 1830s to protect against tidal surges. The water is a brilliant turquoise, dotted with white sails of small fishing boats. To the south, you can see the masts of a schooner arriving from Havana, carrying sugar and cigars. Gulls circle the shrimp boats. Tourists staying at the nearby St. Augustine Hotel walk along the wall, women holding lace parasols against the sun. The Seawall is the city's public waterfront, a place for walking, gossip, and watching incoming ships. In 1885, most visitors arrive by steamship from Jacksonville, landing at the wooden piers that jut into the bay. Groups of boys dive for pennies tossed by arriving passengers. The view across to Anastasia Island is one of the most photographed in Florida. The quiet wooden docks visible now will eventually be replaced by concrete piers, and much later by the Bridge of Lions. But in 1885, this is still the city's face to the world. Our walk ends as we head back toward the center of town, watching long shadows stretch across the sandy streets. Street Augustine in 1885 is a city between two identities. The quiet, slow rhythm of the old Menorcan fishing community is giving way to the speed and money of Gilded Age capitalism arriving by rail. The narrow lanes of tabby, the creaking balconies, the smell of salt and orange blossom, these are the last days of one version of this city. If you visit these places today, you will find a city that has worked hard to hold on to itself. The city gates still stand at the top of George Street, now looking out on a pedestrian tourist corridor rather than a frontier line. George Street itself is a pedestrian mall, busy with visitors, but those overhanging balconies and narrow proportions still provide the same shade they did 140 years ago. The Plaza de la Constitución remains the city's center, its monuments preserved, though the public market is now a historic site rather than a fish stall. Flagler's Ponce de Leon Hotel is Flagler College today, its rotunda and Tiffany glass windows still in daily use. Augustine of 1885 is a city on the edge of change it did not fully choose. That it survived, and that so much of it is still physically here, says something about what this place is made of. As the sun drops over the San Sebastian River, and the first of Flagler's electric lights begin to flicker on across town, we leave this moment. The 20th century is coming, with its cars, its bridges, and its millions of visitors. But for tonight, the air still smells of orange blossoms and the Atlantic. Where should we travel next? Let me know in the comments, and we'll rebuild it together from the fragments of history.